everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be taking a look at this album here. It's the second album by Blur and it's Modern Life is Rubbish. So yes, I'll just be doing my usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the album, then showing you my vinyl copy of it here, and then look at each of the album songs in detail. So this was the band's second album, like I said, released on the 10th of May in 1993. Now, following the release of their debut album Leisure, the band found themselves at a low point with a poor critical standing in relation to both their live performances but also their general musical style, which was quite derivative of the Manchester scene from a few years previous. They were forced to tour the United States on a 44-day tour, which was a huge failure for the band, as the audiences rather disapproved of their music. They were still this is when grunge had just taken over the independent music scene. Also the band themselves frequently got into fights amongst themselves, and generally this rather negative experience of America made singer and songwriter Damien Albarn miss all the little things about Britain, but also grew to despise American culture. Now, upon returning from this tour of America, Blur had found that their star had faded significantly in the UK, with Suede the new big acts of the time. They're very much in competition with them. Albarn said that Suede and America fueled his desires to go out and prove to everyone that Blur were worth it. They made this album to prove themselves, going in quite a different direction, embracing influences from 60s music such as the Kinks, the Small Faces and the Beatles, and expanded their sound to include orchestras and brass sections, as well as backing vocalists as well. Now, Blur's first choice for producer for this album was XTC's Andy Partridge. Now, Partridge is notoriously difficult to work with. He butted heads a lot with Todd Rundgren, when he was producing XTC's Skylarking album. And they did actually go into the studio with Partridge. However, he felt that their songs were a bit substandard, and these sessions proved fruitless. They then continued with the producer of their last album, Leisure, a certain Stephen Street, who was also famous for working with the Smiths and Morrissey. So the album was complete in late 1992. However, their label Food Records rejected it, with the UK bosses wanting more hit singles. They would deliver on that, recording extra songs for Tomorrow and Chemical World, and the American company though went one step further, wanting to re-record the entire album using Nirvana's producer, which was an absolute no-no for the band. In terms of commercial success, it didn't do too great for the band at the time of its release. It charted at number 15 in the UK, some 8 points below Leisure. However, it did get a much stronger critical reception in the following years, as Blur would go on to become one of the decade's biggest acts. In America though, where they had tried very hard to break this and the previous album, it was a huge flop, not even charting on the Billboard 200, and only estimated to have sold around 19,000 copies, which again America is absolutely nothing. It's an interesting parallel between Blur's fortunes in America, and also the Idols, the Kinks, who similarly very British style music had absolutely no commercial success in America when they were originally going. So I want to show you my copy of the vinyl. This is just a bog standard V issue of it here. We'll start with the cover. Firstly, I really do like the cover, the picture of the Mallard steam locomotive there. Again, it just really evokes a bygone age. The back cover continues that. It's an oil painting of the band on what looks like a tube train. Yeah, just really nice packaging to this one. The gatefold's not much though. It's just this sort of quite basic design on it there. And the inner sleeves though are quite cool, because what you've got on them is again you've got the design from the inner sleeve, but then you've got the lyrics and the guitar chords, which is the only album like which I've come across like where the guitar chords are printed, like which as a guitarist like I am like quite grateful for. Like apparently like Graham Cox I kind of wanted to sort of like demystify like sort of like guitar playing, like to sort of like put like the chords like on here so anyone like could play along, and like the labels are pretty nice as well, just as the tracks on one side and then the cover photo there, and the second vinyl disc like is pretty much like identical to this one. So anyway, I will now go over each of the album songs. So there are 14 actual tracks on here like in total, so this might be a bit of like a lengthy review, but like I'll basically just score each track out of 10 and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album. So it kicks off with a song called For Tomorrow, which is a really, really great opener. Like, it's a Blur classic, this one here. Really nice, like, acoustic guitar, like, work on it, as well as, like, a really good, like, string arrangement. There's a definite sign of growth, like, from the debut album. We've just got a really fun sing-along chorus. My only minor complaint with this one is it is a little bit long towards the end. Like, it kind of, like, the la 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 sort of, like, chorus bit maybe is a little bit too repetitive, but like, I'd still give it full marks because it is a classic song, this, and like apparently like this was one of like the last minute additions like to the album, like so like commissioned like by the label, like as like the original album like was deemed not to have any singles on it. You also read that like I also read on like Wikipedia that Jeff Lynne like was considered to like have like been like producing like this like specific song, like which would have been quite interesting, like it's a bit ELO-y like in places like this one here, like, but yeah, like would have been like interesting collaboration there. And like yeah, like I said, that was a single, didn't do too great compared to some of like their latest successes, only reached number 28 like on the charts, but it is a really good song there and a great album opener. You need a holiday somewhere in the... Next track up is called Advert, which I really like this one. Again, it begins with a kind of like a twinkly sort of like piano, but then suddenly we get these really heavy guitars in it, kind of quite a punky song like in places, like in like the verses, like, but then I like the change out for the chorus, like where it gets a bit more like melodic. And lyrically this song is about kind of seeing like a holiday advert, like the lyric goes like you need a holiday somewhere in the sun, and like it's definitely like very much directly influenced like by the Kinks. Like there's a song on like their album Face to Face called Holiday in Waikiki, which is kind of covers like the same sort of like subject ground. So yeah, like definite like a direct influence there. And yeah, Advert, another really, really cracking song, so that one would also get a 10 out of 10. Looks at his watch, he's on time. Next up is called Colin Zeal, which is a yeah, another really good solid song. This one, especially like the introduction guitar riff, reminds me a lot of the Jam song Mr. Clean, and like also lyrically it is very much like kind of like taken like from like that sort of like style, like a songwriting kind of like a character study, like about like a sort of like a typical like businessman. Like he sort of sings like on like the chorus like he's so pleased with himself, and that maybe gets a tad repetitive, and that's why I would notch this one down a couple of marks, but overall it is still a really good song there. So Colin Zeal would get a 8 out of 10 from me. Next one up, which closes off the first side, is called Pressure on Julian, which I will give a 7 out of 10 to. This one begins with a kind of more like feedbacked guitar riff and like a kind of like a pulsating like kind of like rhythm like on it. Kind of gives the song a very sort of hazy, like almost drunken sort of like feeling to it, like, which I guess was maybe like the intended effect. I would say with the song it's just a bit ploddy though. It kind of like it is sort of like it's got quite a slow and like sort of like sludgy tempo to it. It does speed up like towards the end though, but to the point where it does get a little bit annoying. So yeah, like that one, like I would give a 7 out of 10 to. You never know, it might grow on me, but right now it's not one of my favourites on the album. And then we flip over to the second side, which begins with a song called Star Shaped, which is one of my favourites on the album, and this one I would give a 10 out of 10 to. This is just such a fun, breezy song you've got. It's just really wonderfully well constructed, great backing vocals like on it, a really catchy melody, really sort of Beatlesque like this one. It's got a great like little, I think it's like a trumpet solo, like, or maybe like an oboe or like a flute or something. Reminds me like a lot of like Penny Lane, and yeah, it's just a really good little pop song this, and like yeah, definitely for me one of the best on the album. So Star Shaped would get a 10 out of 10. Next track up though could be my favourite on the album. It is Blue Jeans. And this one is just a lovely, chilled out song, quite sort of like lackadaisical kind of production on it. It just creates a really great like atmosphere. Lyrically, it's about sort of like living like without like any regrets. Like I love the chorus like where he says I don't really want to change a thing. I want to stay this way forever. Yeah, he just sings it so well, and it is just a really nice song. So definitely a highlight on the album there. Blue Jeans would get a 10 out of 10. Then the next track up is called Chemical World, which is a pretty good song, this one here. Quite a memorable chorus like on it, and again it's quite a loud like sort of like anthemic like song, this one here. Like it was kind of written to order, this one though, because like, the American record company wanted them to do something like a bit more like rock driven, and like kind of like to release like as a single, and like this is like what they came up with. So kind of like written to order, and you can maybe tell like a little bit like, but it is a good song though. I quite like the call and response structure like in the verse. As a single, this also reached 28 on the charts, and yeah, it is a good song. And it's followed by a sort of short instrumental piece, which I won't score like on the album. Like it's nothing much really. It's called Intermission. Well, I say that nothing much. It actually runs like for 2 minutes and 27 seconds. So like I should have like scored this one. Like, but it's basically just like an instrumental piano piece, like kind of like a music hall-y sort of vibe to it. And it sort of starts off like quite slow, like and like meandering, like, but then it sort of like picks up pace to the point of like chaos really. So maybe a bit like unnecessary on the album, and like does get annoying like as like there's 2 minutes like start to like eat away, like, but like that kind of like it sort of serves like as being like the midpoint like of the album. Okay, and then we carry on with a song called Sunday Sunday, which is again another pretty good song here. Begins with quite heavy like sort of like drums like on it, and then just a really sort of like foot tapping track, basically like about the routine like of like a typical Sunday. Again, it's got kind of vaudevillian music hall style to it, which maybe makes it sound a little bit cheesy. Like it's a bit sort of like they would kind of do this style to death a little bit, like on stuff like Country House and like songs like such as that. But definitely you can see that they were going for like a very sort of like Kinksy vibe, like on this one, stuff like Autumn Almanac, like sort of like you can hear like in this song here. However, like it kind of has a more sort of like a scorning sort of tone like to it compared to like the Kinks like more like celebratory mood. And this one again, another one of the singles, and was actually like the highest charting single from the album, and reached number 26 on the UK charts there. But I would say like out of the singles, it was definitely like the weakest choice, and I would only give it a 7 out of 10. Up is called Oily Water, which is a pretty good song, this one here. I like the vocal performance, like what Damien Albarn does. So he kind of sings this one like through like a filtered vocal effect, and it kind of has a sort of psychedelic mood like to it, this one, like in like some places, like sort of like along like with like quite abstract like lyrics like on the track, like about sort of drinking oily water. But for me, it is guitarist Graham Coxon who really dominates like this song, especially like towards the end, like with just really like great sounding like swirling guitar work. And like although this one runs to like 5 minutes exactly, yeah, there's just so much like going on like in it that it is like really like worth like your attention. So yeah, Oily Water would get a 9 out of 10, another really good song. Miss America,
sits in the sheets.
And then we get probably my least favourite on the album. It's called Miss America, which I'm not a massive fan of. Again, it's quite a lazy song, this one here. It is quite chilled out, yes, but it is quite long as well. Like, it's 5 minutes 34 seconds, this one here. And it is, yeah, perhaps what we need on the album, like, after, like, the last couple of more, like, rockier, like, guitar-driven, like, songs. But I just think Albon sounds so disinterested that's singing this one here, and it's just a boring song for me. So I would only be able to give a 5 out of 10, but as I said, there is maybe like room for growth there. Okay, and then the next one up is called Villa Rosie, which is a good song. This one here, it picks up the pace like off the album, quite an intense like introduction like on this one here, but then we just get a really good, fun, bouncy little pop song here. The verse for me is kind of forgettable. Albon kind of raps like the verse like a little bit, like isn't really sort of like singing like in like the traditional like melodic sense. Like, but then the chorus like is quite catchy. Again, you've got some great guitar work like from like Graham Coxton. So yeah, another pretty good song there. I wouldn't call it one of the highlights on the album, but it is a good song.
Can I go through this again?
And then we're on to the final side of the album. It opens up with a song called Coping, which again begins with some sort of more crunchy guitar work, and it is kind of the typical fare. Like, it's sort of like the sound of this album at this point has kind of been like established like from the last say like 40 minutes or so. Like, so we kind of know like what to like expect. But like lyrically, this one like is slightly different. It's a bit more sort of it's a bit more personal, like, and like self-critical, self-reflective. He sort of sings primal evil, what am I, but I'm too tired to care. And yeah, it is a nice song, this one here. You got a nice like synthesizer like riff like on like the outro. Again, an interesting sort of like combination like of like sort of like towards the end especially like sort of like the banal like la 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 sort of chorus, but then like a heavier musical backing, like that sort of like juxtaposition really works well. So yeah, Coping would get an 8 out of 10 there from me.
Turn it up, turn it in. Turn it up, turn it up.
And then the penultimate song is called Turn It Up, which I would say is another one of the weaker moments on the album. This is a more guitar-driven song, a bit more like rockier, this one here. Actually reminds me a lot of Oasis, this song. Like, of course, like Oasis like would come along like a year or so later, but kind of like just in terms like of like its like anthemic chorus is kind of like swaggery vibe to it, and like also like the lyrics like which really don't have much meaning. He sings like kazoo kazoo you were mine, like his like first line, like something like that. Very throwaway, very sort of like not really necessary like on the album, like I would say. It doesn't really fit in like with like the overall mood and themes like of the record. So it's one I would maybe throw off the album, like if like I was like thinking like of like maybe like cutting it down like or something. But yeah, Turn It Up, alright song, would get a 6 out of 10. And then the final track on the album is called Resigned, which is a kind of mid-tempo ballad, this one here. It begins quite well. You've got a quite nice catchy like synthesizer riff like on it, and like again lyrically like it kind of like continues like the slightly depressing moods like of like the song Coping. He sings, I think too much of things I want too much, it makes me hateful. But it is a good closer though. Again, it kind of got a sort of murky like psychedelic like mood that which you get like through like the production, and like it's sort of like it rounds off the album quite well, I feel. But it isn't the final track, because we get a little thing called Commercial Break, which runs for just under a minute, and it's very similar to like the intermission track, sort of like a frantically played, like fast-paced, like short, like little like snippet, and like it does round off the album like alright. It kind of gives it the sense of it being a concept album, like which I guess it is, like kind of like having like these two tracks like which almost act like as kind of like semi bookends like almost, and like yeah, like it is a fairly good closing song there. So yeah, overall Resigned would get an 8 out of 10. So So yeah, overall, I would score this album 82%. So I think this is a very, very strong album here. I think what makes this album particularly good is it was kind of, they made this kind of before like this sort of like they made it big, like kind of like it doesn't have like the sort of like the baggage of Britpop, like which perhaps plagues like Parklife and like The Great Escape. Maybe there are a couple of like fillery moments on it, especially like on like the fourth and the third and fourth sides like on here. But there is enough high quality content like on here for me to consider it a real good, strong classic 90s album. Other good points about the album are the production, like which is very sort of like consistent like throughout the album. Like it was all produced like by Stephen Street, like but it's a very sort of clean cut sound, but still very punchy, still quite tough like when it needs to be, as well as like Albon's very like melodic songwriting. I would say though maybe some of like the lyrics like with like very overtly like English themes like on them, say something like Sunday Sunday, it does give the impression like they were maybe copying like the Kinks like a little bit. But it is certainly overall though the sound of a band like trying like to find themselves and very much being confident like in like what they are doing, and I would say is one of the strongest second albums which I've like come across. So that has been my review of Blur's Modern Life is Rubbish. So yes, hope you have enjoyed this review. I will be interested to know what you think of the album down below in the comments, and I will see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.